All right, Christopher Adamson back with the It's Personal podcast. I'm joined today by Peter Iwuh. Did I say that right?
Correct, Iwuh.
And Peter's the principal of Tykoon. Is that right?
The CEO and founder, president, principal. Wear various hats in the company.
Tell us a little bit about Tykoon and what you do.
Yeah, so Tykoon is primarily a conglomerate company. We primarily specialize in entertainment marketing. So we actually are active in various spaces of the entertainment industry, from music, film, and then sports is one of our new aspects that we've been working very heavily in. So from building personal brands, facilitating brand partnerships, events, experiences, the whole nine. We work with amazing small businesses, nonprofits, university partners, athletes, musicians, the whole nine. So that's Tykoon.
Okay. We're back with another episode of the It's Personal podcast. I'm Christopher Adamson.
This is personal injury. It is personal.
Yep. You mentioned NIL. We want to dive more into NIL during our discussion here today. So can you explain what NIL means and its impact in college athletics?
100%. Yeah. NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And you can essentially think about it as influencer marketing, but for student athletes, right? Because in the past, student athletes were just limited to tuition, scholarships, but there was no thought of sustainability in terms of what they were doing outside of what they were doing on the court, right? So a lot of legal conversations had, cultural conversations had, that then led to the shift that allowed the NCAA to pass a law that gave student athletes the opportunity to monetize from their name, image, and likeness. Because in the past, the students were left out of all of the money that was coming in from sponsorships and all the money that the school was making from the college sports business. So I think right now we're at a fair level where like student athletes at least can partake some way, somehow, you know?
Okay. And I know a little bit about kind of the history of NIL just growing up and watching athletics and kind of following the storyline a little bit. We want to talk about the history of paying athletes and how NIL came to be. So from what I know and my understanding, a lot of this, like the first domino started to fall back in whenever it was, I think like the late 90s or the mid to late 90s with Ed O'Bannon at UCLA. So at UCLA, they had won a national championship. They had these two brothers, the O'Bannon brothers, Ed and Charles O'Bannon. And I think it was Ed who filed a lawsuit to basically, he was advocating for players to get paid, from what I remember. Because at that time, kind of what you mentioned, student athletes were not able to get paid off their name, image, likeness, and they're bringing in all this money in terms of sports revenue, like jersey sales, T-shirt sales, like all the gear associated with the schools. All that revenue is going to the schools, and it's not being split with the athletes. So Ed O'Bannon was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, we're the ones who are out here putting in our sweat equity. We're winning national championships. We're balancing being students and athletes. It's not fair that all this money that we're generating for the schools is not going to the athletes at all. It's just going back to the schools. So we filed a lawsuit, which I think took something like 10 years or something like that to get resolved, right? And so over that course of time, because of what he was doing and the lawsuit kind of winding its way through the court system, it brought the awareness of what student athletes really go through to the public, and the public perception of quote unquote student athletes and what it's like being a student athlete. Their awareness kind of got expanded, and then like those dominoes kept falling until today, where now we have NIL deals where donors can give money directly to athletes to pay them for their sports, quote unquote, marketability, right? They're not actually paying them like a salary. They're just saying, we see this, brand awareness you have, or this awareness you have. We want to compensate you for your visibility by giving you money. So that was one component of it, right? That I think that came to fruition in 2021. And then later in 2024, there was another lawsuit that actually allowed the schools to pay the athletes directly, from what I understand. So it's kind of all been like a trajectory from that first O'Bannon UCLA lawsuit to today. That's kind of like a bird's eye view of what's gone on. Is is that summary pretty accurate, or are there things I
100%.
left out, or
Yeah,
what's your take?
100%. Yeah, I think most of it is pretty accurate, and it's key to note too that like even dating back to the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
like it was a stride and it was a challenge for student athletes to even get scholarships, to
Mm-hmm.
even get room and board. So it was extremely progressive, right? As like a lot of things are, and I think also when NIL passed, it became pay to play like extremely quickly, and obviously still is. But I think the other aspect that I'm very active in is working with student athletes on building their personal brand
Mm-hmm.
and facilitating brand partnerships, because like if a student athlete doesn't go pro, all they have is their personal brand, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really a key advocate of making sure student athletes are taking this opportunity with NIL to build their personal brand, get familiar with brand partnerships, and establish some sort of standard for themselves, to where as though even after college, if they choose not to play sports, or they choose to go into entrepreneurship, or even they choose to go the professional route, they at least have a brand that they work with, that they were able to build like while they're in school. And I think that's what NIL was made to be. Now we have the collectives and the boosters coming in here and kind of just making it like the NFL, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
pay and come here and pay and come here. Granted, obviously, like a lot of that stuff is getting controlled now. That's where you hear about the law that you just mentioned, where all right, it's like, look, if you guys are gonna give money to the schools anyway, to the athletes anyway, like this is how it should be regulated, and that's the adjustments that's coming in now. But I definitely think that like even when I have conversations like this to speak on NIL, is key to make sure that like people understand that NIL was made for student athletes to monetize from their personal brand, right? It literally had nothing to do with the stats that you put up, championships, all of that stuff was icing on the cake. But who you are as a person, like what you're day in life, is like really building an audience that connects with you, to where as though whatever you do with your passion, they will still follow you. It's like the beauty in NIL for me and like the business that I'm in, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's fertile ground for conversation on this topic. One of the things you mentioned about NILs is that it's not necessarily like meant to be compensation or pay to play. It's more so like, we see your brand, we want to encourage you to build your brand, have money that you can potentially accrue if you don't make it to the next level, right? But I think what we've seen, and this is still very nascent and it's very new, it's like the biggest players that already have the biggest platforms, or maybe like they have a name behind them, like a Shador Sanders, like a Arch Manning, right? Like the money is going to football, especially because football has always been the big money maker, but also like the players that are getting those deals for whatever reason, I think they have like heat behind their name. Like, I don't know how much, well, let me ask you, like, how much do you think is this like these players are like organically growing their brand and then they get on the radar of a Nike or a whatever, or because they have a name that's attached to them already, the brands are coming to them?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, because at Tykoon Sports, we really look to serve student athletes from like minority and underrepresented communities, like where I come from. So we don't have like the Shadors or the Travis Hunters or a lot of these household names. So it truly does fall back on their personal brand and like the audience that they're able to build organically from like the creative content they're putting out and whatnot. And I think that most student athletes are in that situation too. And I think a lot of brands are also starting to like gravitate towards athletes in different sports, right? Because even like with the partnership that we have, like soccer is a unique sport because that's a growing market, right? So a lot of markets are starting to grow outside of just like the footballs and the basketballs, even when you just think about like women's sports as well. So I think that the brands with the right marketing teams, or who are at least having the right conversations as it relates to marketing, are thinking about the athletes that are on the rise, the sports that are on the rise, like the divers, the people that play lacrosse, the people that play all these other sports that are soon to start getting that exact same recognition. And I think another thing is local deals too, right? Like a lot of people really undermine like local deals. Everybody thinks about the Nikes or the Gatorades, but nobody thinks about like the local coffee shop or the local law firm or whoever they can partner with in their local community to really maximize NIL. So like when we speak on NIL, we try to make sure a lot of these things are at top of mind so you can like work your way up to the Nikes or the Gatorades, regardless of what your household name is, because of the personal brand that you've established for yourself, you know? So that's kind of like my take on it. And for people with the big names, and very fortunate for them, but I think that there's still a huge portion of student athletes, especially the ones that look like me and you, who don't have the boosters or who don't have that name behind them. And that's probably never going to come just based off of like the geographic associated challenges or just like the nature of the school and how they don't have like funding to do certain things. So I think that there's still a good amount of student athletes who like need that support as it relates to like solidifying their personal brand.
And you mentioned the collaboration that you're working on with our office and the two female soccer players at UCLA. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think when we were like speaking with the athletes, we try to make sure that the brands that we partner with the brands that we pair them up with are brands that like truly align with like what they stand for and what they see for their community. And the two athletes that we partner with, they were really big on like giving back to the Hispanic community, especially in Los Angeles. So those are the criteria that we were having conversations with brands with. And even if a brand has all the money in the world, they have all the resources in the world, if it doesn't align with what the athlete is looking for, we tend to stray away from it so it doesn't feel forced or unorganic. So in this situation, like when we were having conversations with the marketing team at the law firm, like it was evident that there was a specific niche of the Hispanic community that there was a room for improvement. And then the student athletes on the flip side of the token were looking to partner with a brand that wants to like cater to that audience and provide that value. So that's essentially kind of how that matchmaking process takes place. Like we have a conversation with the athlete and get a good understanding of like what their passions are, like what impact they want to have through partnerships, and then find brands that like have those similar qualities and values. So that's typically how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about NIL money, and NIL money is to compensate the players for their brand, right? But aside from that, like historically, there's also been an argument that players should just get basically like a stipend or a quote unquote salary. So like branding aside, because being a student athlete is hard, right? And even though you might have a scholarship and get room and board and stuff like that, you're still going to have expenses outside of that your scholarship doesn't cover. And so kind of in the wake of the O'Bannon lawsuit, there was also this guy, Ramogi Huma, who played linebacker at UCLA. And then post his playing career, he started this organization that I think it's like NCPA, National College or Collegiate Players Association. So he was basically similar to the O'Bannon brothers, like advocating for the rights of student athletes to be paid because their scholarships aren't always going to cover all of their expenses. So NIL money aside, what's your take on whether student athletes should be able to get some sort of like other compensation? Because not everybody's going to get like a huge NIL deal or a NIL deal, but there's still student athletes who have to balance athletics with being a student, and they might not have time to go out and get like a part-time job or something like that to supplement their income. Like, do you feel student athletes should also get some sort of like stipend or quote unquote salary or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, even in the midst of NIL, or even if NIL wasn't here, I think it's evident that the student athletes obviously play a huge role in the business and the cash influx that these schools have, specifically as it relates to athletics, right? So I think that everybody deserves a piece of the pie, right? And like certain mistakes in the past are not meant to be continued. So like, well, whatever we were doing in the 1800s or the 1900s is not what we should be doing now. So we wasn't getting paid then we should be getting paid now, right? So I think that like, that's simply my take on it. And I think that it's as easy as it is to say, like, I could also agree that it's going to be challenging to define like how much this person gets versus that person and like the role of each student athlete. But I definitely think that like conversations should continue to be had about like how student athletes, especially like the top sports more specifically, it doesn't have to be a specific player, but like whether it's based off of like the income generated in sports or what seasons or whatever the case may be, however they do the mathematics, like making sure that the students who are bringing in this income are at least seeing some sort of fruition from it, because a lot of them may not go pro. So like what happens then, right? Like, are they just meant to like start at square one? So whether it's from NIL or in conjunction with like what you're talking about with like rev share, I definitely think that like those conversations should be had for sure.
Do you have any ideas? Like, are you in favor of like a revenue sharing model or some other method of kind of like divvying up this money?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they should, and I heard that they even want to like go to the extent of like going back years back and like backtracking student athletes that missed out. And I think that all of that stuff, I feel like it's a start of a bigger change. Like I will say that like there are adjustments and there are conversations that are taking place to where as though like student athletes are slowly starting to become a piece of the pie. I know like even with EA Sports, like before EA Sports will come out, it just come out, you just hope to see yourself on it. And like now they've come up with a model to where as though like if you're on the platform, you get an X amount of cash. Granted, I definitely think that student athletes deserve more than what others are getting. Granted, the idea of student athletes being like brought in now, I think is something that's becoming more common. I think it's a good first step, you know what I mean? So I think that like based off of how like what we're testing out right now goes, so like the revenue model that we're testing out right now, like based off of how that maybe helps the athletics business or maybe hurts the athletic business, I think that like that's going to position everybody to really know like, all right, if this is something that we should really like drill on or not, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the EA Sports point is a good point because I was also behind the O'Bannon lawsuit. Like at that time, that NCAA basketball game was like a huge success, but like the players weren't getting any of the revenue off that. Same with NCAA football, the EA Sports video game. So like all these players were like playing these video games as themselves, and they're selling like crazy, and they're not seeing any revenue. So I think that was also kind of like an important cog in those dominoes starting to fall to get us to where we are now.
Yeah. We're almost there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think almost is relative, right? Because I think some of this stuff is like turning around the Titanic. So like if you think about it, historically, that term student athlete is a term of art that I think they first started using in like the 50s. And the reason they used it was very specific. It's not because like we believe in the idea of like the virtue of being a student athlete, et cetera. It was just like basically a fiction because they didn't want to call the athletes employees, because if you call them employees, then you have to pay them a fair wage. You have to provide health insurance or workers' compensation insurance or something like that. So I think this has always been driven more so by not wanting to pay the athletes and not wanting to have to provide them for insurance and health insurance, especially in sports where the likelihood of a catastrophic injury, something like football, is super high, right? And then like in the 50s, all these sports were predominantly white, right? But then these sports started getting integrated, and you have all these black athletes who are really driving the revenue, because football is still like college football is like the number one sport in America, right? And it's driving the revenue at all of these programs. So I think from that perspective, once like that integration occurred, there was even like more of an impetus from these universities not to pay these players, because it's a form of control as well, to being able to control the athlete. And because once you start paying them, they have more freedom over what they want to do and where they want to go. Like you're seeing it now. That's kind of one of the fallouts of NIL, in my opinion, is that it's made college sports more mercenary, because now it's like you see people jumping around way more. They're like jumping in the portal. They're going from here to there because somebody is waving more money in front of their face. Like that, the story about Nico Iamaleava going from Tennessee to UCLA, like that just happened a couple of days ago. So like it's still kind of getting sorted out, but like people might look at him as the villain because they're like, oh, you signed a letter of intent or whatever to go to Tennessee, and now you're like turncoat because you're leaving Tennessee to go to UCLA. But there's more to the story in terms of what Nico's saying, and like Tennessee promised stuff. They didn't give it to him. Plus he's from Southern California, so he wants to come home. So I think some of the fallout from NIL money is like, we're going to continue seeing it over like a longer time span. But how do you feel about that in terms of the perception maybe that college athletes can now be seen as more mercenary and just like following the money, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a good point. I think it's really about understanding the full story. I mean, you know how social media is. People just take things for what they see with maybe like one or two sentences saying, hey, I'm just transferring. Obviously, the athlete is not going to put to their thousands of followers that this coach did this or this program promised me that and didn't give it to me. And that typically is the case. That's typically the reality. Like a lot of student athletes, especially the ones that we deal with, because we had a good amount who were in the transfer, actually a huge amount who like switched schools and whatnot. But when I ask them why, or sometimes I don't even have to ask them, like, yeah, I'm considering switching schools. Like, hey man, I came to this school, coach said he was going to do this, do that. It's been 2 years. So like a lot of people don't know like how much they've endured, how much they haven't spoke on, how much they've withholded prior to making these transfers, right? So I think that that's one thing. And another thing is that like, I guess, even just thinking about like some of the other student athletes on the other end of the stick, like certain schools just transparently come with more light, more marketability. That's just a by default thing, right? And it's like, again, you might be in a situation where your school has promised to work on this program or work on this grant that could potentially help boost your marketability, but then that doesn't happen to be the case. And you're looking up on your phone and all your other peers at other schools are doing well, right? So at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in doing what's best for you, right? For me, we're not a platform that is like dedicated to a specific school. So if a student athlete feels as though that there's an opportunity for growth, or there's an opportunity to qualify for the draft, for the opportunity to really make, because another thing too, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of students transfer at like key moments in their career. Like a lot of these students, they just have 1 more year left or 2 more years left, and it's like they're really trying to maximize it because it goes out fast. So you can't necessarily be upset at somebody, right, for being like, look, out of my 4 years of eligibility, I just got 1 more left. Like, I've paid my love to this school for the first 3 years. It's time for a new chapter. You can't be mad at that, right? So that's my personal take on it, right? So I'm all for whatever shit. If I decided today and, wanted to do something else, I hope that, whoever is my current supporters will still support me. So that's kind of my take on it,
With the Nico situation, do you feel like players in similar situations moving forward are going to be looked at negatively by the media and the fan base when they do these types of things? And if so, how can they potentially mitigate against that?
I mean, I think it comes down to like how much the athlete wants to share, right? Some athletes don't want to make a good program look bad, right? A lot of athletes don't want to like create negative relationships, because that's what you're going to have to do. The same microphones in front of you asking you like, why are you transferring? Why are you leaving? Those are the same microphones that you're going to have to be like, well, this coach said he did this and that. And a lot of student athletes don't want to be put in that position, right? So it comes down to what you want to deal with, right? Some student athletes are like, hey man, whatever comes with that, I'm with that. This coach did this coach did that. Some athletes are like, you know what? Like, I'll let the universe handle it the way it's supposed to handle it. I'm just moving on, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of things go and come by. Like if I was talking to an athlete right now, I would just simply tell them to just do what's best for you. Like if you feel like it's in your best interest to speak on it, do so with proper media training. If not, move in silence and kind of let certain things speak for itself. Because what also starts happening is that you notice certain programs have a lot of athletes leaving, right?
Yeah.
At that point, it can't be the athletes.
Yeah.
Right? So then the focus has to shift to the program or the school. So I think that it kind of just depends on the athlete and how they want to, approach the situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think like coaches leave schools all the time and they're never really held to account. Like they might endure a day or two of like people raking them over the coals or something like that. But then especially if they go to a new school and win, people forget about that stuff. So I think it's also like it's unfair to the athletes to kind of rake them over the coals and say, this guy's a terrible person. I can't believe he left this school, whatever, when these coaches are making promises to these kids every single day, especially to recruit them. They'll be like, come here, I'll be your coach for 4 years. I'll take you from a boy to a man. You'll go to the NFL, da-da-da-da-da. And then after 1 year, some other school waves more money in front of the coach's face and the coach leaves. And the coach is a turncoat. So I just think what's good for the goose is good for the gander as well. Like if you want to talk about a child's decision or like a teenager and their decision to leave a program or something like that as the media, you guys should talk about the coaches in the same way and give them the same level of scrutiny, because a lot of times they're not doing it for the same period of time.
100%. And I mean, you brought up a good point too. Like if the coach promises X amount of, and you got to think about it, they're not just promising one athlete something. They're probably promising the whole full team, the bench, everybody something, right? So when he leaves, who else do you think is going to leave?
Yeah.
The people that he promised something while he was there.
Yeah.
Right? And that's actually one of the most common reasons why student athletes leave, because my coach left, right? The coach that got me here is gone. Nobody, to your point, no media is like talking about that or making that a big deal. But when the athlete moves, then it's a big deal. But again, nobody understands the reasoning behind it. So I think understanding is everything. It's kind of my principle, So I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
Do you think it detracts from, like, I'll say for me, I'm less of a college football fan now than I used to be, just because of like all this, portal jumping and players transferring and stuff like that. It's a lot more prevalent now. Even NIL aside, because I think they loosened up some of the portal rules and stuff like that. Just from like a product perspective or a college football perspective, do you think it undermines the game or undermines kind of the integrity of teams, seeing players be able to jump around so freely?
I mean, this is my thing. Like, let's use the NBA, for example. Like, we see the Luka trade.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be in a situation where either you're making decisions for yourself or the organization is making a decision for you. So in this time frame where you can make the decision by yourself, maximize it. Because if you go pro, you can't just jump around. They're going to be jumping you around. That's my perspective on it. You know what I mean? So I think that like it's something that like as a fan, I personally would just adjust to. It just comes just the same way that like a lot of basketball players wouldn't think that Luka would get traded off the Lakers. And now it's normal now. Now, if you hear that LeBron get traded, you can't be too surprised because that's the business and the times that we're in. So I think, transparently is really a thing about just flexing to the times that we're in because that's not going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just not going anywhere. Yeah.
One of the other aspects of that whole like student athlete, nomenclature was that we don't want to call these kids employees because then they would have the ability to unionize. What's your take on student athletes being able to unionize, whether it's like all the players at one school forming a union or some like nationwide collective union of student athletes?
Yeah, I think that could probably get a bit complicated for the sports industry, to be transparent. So I'm not sure how much of an advocate I would say for them to just form a union and kind of go about it like that. I think the approaches that we're taking right now, where it's like mutually beneficial in the form of a rev share, makes sense. Same thing with like NIL. I think that makes sense. So I think really fine tuning the available options that are like mutually beneficial, as opposed to, I feel like a union can get extreme because an average school has 200 athletes. You know what I mean? So that can get very expensive. This is just me making an assumption, right? Like taking care of 200 students, and then all the time that they're there, then you have the walk-ons, then you have the people that's on half scholarships. Then it's like you have so many factors that come into like that student's contribution to the team that can make that challenging. So I personally think that like the available approaches are like sufficient at this current time. Yeah.
That 2024 lawsuit that got decided, I think it was House versus NCAA. The plaintiff prevailed against the NCAA, from what I understand, on antitrust grounds, right? Which means that the NCAA is basically so huge, it has no competitors, that it's like it has outsized leveraging position because it basically has a monopoly on college athletics. So with that being the case, who advocates on behalf of the athletes against an entity that's essentially a monopoly?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think obviously like individuals like myself have to at least make an attempt. Like I'm a big believer in you don't like shoot shots that you don't make shots that you don't shoot. And I think that there has been situations where like, a mouth that requested was fed, right? Or somebody who spoke up gets responded to. So I think that that's what it comes down to. But then again, I think really just at this stage, I feel like it's really a stage of like observing and really understanding like what's working, what's not working, who is taking this to a legal standpoint and being successful versus who's not, before making the decision of like who's going to represent you. And along with that, I think there's definitely a responsibility of the student athlete to like educate themselves on like everything that obviously you've done your research on too, right? So I think that like that's a whole nother like portion of it, right? Like student athletes not being solely dependent on an agent or a third party, right? Like this impacts you directly, right? So student athletes should make sure that like they're reading laws, they're reading the informations, like what's changing and how that's going to affect like how they're currently approaching it versus how they plan to, kind of thing, right? So I think that like that's kind of what my response will be as it relates to like representation at this current moment, just due to like how much is going on.
Where do you see the NIL landscape kind of going from here?
I see it being like rev share and NIL, like just still being a thing. I think that we're definitely going to get to like a fair like rev share split aspect of things where like you're on a certain team, it comes to this percentage, cool. And then you also have the opportunity to like make money with brands and stuff like that, just so the student athlete is not limited to just the revenue sharing stuff. Because again, when we go to schools like where I went to at Morgan State, even when this revenue thing passes, students are not going to be, they probably going to have enough for lunch. You know what I mean? This is an HBCU that's not making in all that money as it relates to like athletics. So it's like making sure that they have the rev share option, but then also like the NIL opportunity is like what I see it being, right? So like student athletes being able to monetize while they're there, just as it relates to their direct relationship to the school's college business, and then them having the opportunity to like still monetize their name, image, and likeness. That's what I hope is that. I feel like anything else outside of that is like just the wild, wild west, to be honest with you, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of athletes are you working with?
Yeah, we look for athletes. I like to use the term athlete creator. So we
Mhm.
try to find a good mix of an athlete who's obviously doing their thing on the field, but then also understanding of like the social media language, the importance of personal branding, all of that kind of stuff. Just so like when we approach brands, like we're approaching them with like a really good product in the student athlete, right? So making sure that student athletes are showing the ups, but then also the downs of their career, right? Like
Mhm.
showcasing the skills that we didn't know you possess as an athlete, or like the fun things that you do with your family on your free time, right? I think that those are things that like brands want to see. So like when they look at their profile or portfolio or whatever we put in front of them, they don't just see the top scorer at USC. They see this person who is interested in XYZ, right? And
Mhm.
that's really what helps push that long-term relationship, which we really go for. So yeah, we don't, I mean, and I also say we don't necessarily look for the top player on the court. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes if a brand is seeking specifically for an ideal candidate, that becomes a different situation. But like typically when we look for student athletes, we look for student athletes who are balancing like what they're doing on the court with also just like their personal brand and like their personality. And we want to be able to connect with them outside. A lot of my student athletes, I mean, you could ask, we don't talk about sports that much. It's
Mhm.
like I want to know about like what's going on with you as a person, like what's
Mhm.
going on with your family, like what are you eating, what are you drinking? Like I care about that stuff more than I care about like the top score. You know what I mean? So like a
Mhm.
lot of those things are numbers that they come, they're challenged, they're surpassed, they go. You have new history numbers and all of that type of stuff, and they're great for the time being. And not to say that if they win a championship or something, we don't celebrate.
Mhm.
But the importance for me is more who they are as a person. You know what I mean? So those are student athletes we look for people that we can like connect with on a personal level. Everything else we can figure out. You know what I mean? Everything else can be figured out. So
Nationwide, are you guys keeping track of the NIL money that like athletes are getting?
yeah, we've
Okay.
been hearing we've been hearing about a lot of big deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's had the top deal this year thus far?
I just heard about a 2.3. A lot of these athletes are getting money, man.
Yeah.
I heard, but to be clear though, a lot of the athletes who are getting the most money are getting them through collectives and boosters, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of brands are not coughing up these. I mean, brands are probably coughing up maybe like $500,000 at
Yeah.
most or something like that. But I've been hearing about a lot of collective booster deals in the like 2-3 millions for like quarterbacks and stuff like that.
It's like boosters just pooling money, right?
Just for I honestly still try to land on the objective of these boosters. If you ask me,
Mhm.
I think that boosters are just people who love their school so much that they're willing to like pay somebody to like play there to keep the relevancy of their school alive. That's kind of how I look at it. Because most of them they don't do community service. They don't do nothing. They're not really doing anything
Yeah.
outside of compensating people to keep their school's name relevant in the sports game. Period.
They're just like super fans, basically.
With cash, with a lot of money.
with a lot of cash.
That's
Yeah.
how exactly how I look at collectives and boosters. That's exactly how I look at them.
Yeah.
You know, so when people trying to get me involved in that business is like, that's not my. I mean, I'm sure I'll probably be a millionaire if I was engaging in like negotiating these contracts, and I'm not extremely opposed to it the way this space is going. But it's definitely like changing like what NIL was meant to be, and that's where back to your question, like I've been hearing a lot of like $1 million conversations take place for athletes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, that same money, like that booster money has always been there. They just had to give it quote unquote to the school.
Yeah.
Right. But then also there's always been stories about boosters giving players money under the table, like Eric Dickerson famously at SMU, that was alleged. The movie Blue Chips with Shaq, that's all that was about. So it's just like, I think it's I don't know, it's the same thing, but just in a different package, right? And so then now they've said, okay, instead of giving the money to the school, you can now give it directly to the player. But like as far as that goes, I don't necessarily think it's too different. Maybe it's just that now it's like in front of everybody's face, and now you can like legitimately give a lot of money to a player, quote unquote, on the up and up. But I think it's like you said, it's like these boosters are super fans, especially like in the South where the SEC is like football is religion, right? So if like I have a bunch of oil money at Texas or a bunch of whatever money at Alabama, I'm gonna give all this money to this player because I want my school to keep winning championships, because I'm a super fan and I love it.
That's a booster right there for you. That's exactly the description of a booster. That's a booster right there, right? Exactly how you articulated. That's what a booster is.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less. So, yeah.
Were you gonna jump in and say something?
I was gonna throw in I just found the stats of Archman
For this year?
6.6 million.
For 2025 or like his entire collegiate career? Because I think he was in the top 10 like last year too, like him and Shador.
That's his like estimated valuation. So maybe that's
Of his, maybe, yeah.
He had, I think, one of the biggest one last year.
Arch Manning?
I think so.
Yeah.
One of them.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, and again, going back to names, like his last name is Manning. Like Peyton's his uncle, I think, because I think his dad is Cooper. And then like his grandfather was Archie, who played in the NFL. You know, his other uncle is Eli. So they have so much heat behind their name that, I mean, he is a good player, right? But somebody like that, they're going to like throw money at him, you know? Same with Shador, because his last name's Sanders. He's playing for Dion. So some of these players, like, their name is going to help them get large branding deals as well.
But that's like a 1% though.
Yeah, it is
It's
like the
a
1%.
Yeah, it's like I would equate that to like the 1%.
Yeah.
Right. So there's still a 99.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That 99 is going to be like that for a long time. So I definitely think that there's still like room for improvement to assist a lot, especially like new sports. You know what I mean? Like a lot of our athletes, like we have a lot of like gymnasts. We intentionally not stray away from football and basketball. They're not going anywhere, but we try to make sure that we're not just focused on like the sports that are already working. Like we want the diver, we want the gymnast, we want the cyclist, we want the bowler, the arch, the thing. Like I want all of that stuff, you know? So I think that like that's going to be the future of NIL. You're going to start hearing about like the Sanders of the worlds in swimming pools, on bowling alleys and stuff like that. So like that's the future of NIL, or on gymnast beams and stuff like that's the future of like sports. You know what I mean? If you ask me with this NIL stuff coming up.
How do you find the bowler or the archer or the person in a non-traditional sport?
Yeah, I feel like if an athlete was asking me that question, my response to them would be like, I should find you. You know, like and that goes for any creator too. I'm a big firm believer. Like a lot of people are looking for agents or looking for a manager. Like if you need one, we'll find you. That's our job.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's our job to find talent who we can help elevate, right? So like if you're creating that content, if you're building that personal brand, if you're utilizing social media to propel like whatever your personal story is, I'll find you. You know what I mean? Like we will find you. You know what I mean? That's literally our job every day. Like looking for athletes who stand out and will be great brand partners for the brand partners that we work with.
What do you look for in terms of marketability? Like I'm assuming it's not just followers, right? It has to be other things as well.
Yeah, and I think that simply for me is athletes who at least just show the interest and at least like show initiative to like create personal brands. I feel like a lot of student athletes don't mind creating some student athletes don't mind creating content, but just need the ideas, or some have the ideas but need help editing. So like at least have something where we can meet you in the middle. You know what I mean? Like at least take that initiative where we can come in and support with the production, or we can come in and support with the strategy. But like we tend to avoid student athletes where we have to preach why social media is even important in the first place. Like there's no fit there. You know what I mean? Because if we have to preach that to you, then the brand partnership's not going to work. You're going to be submitting things late. This is going to be your first time creating a video. Like all that stuff we try to avoid. You know what I mean? So I think that like those are the things that we look for, like as it relates to like marketability. Because if you have 5K, but you're creating content, again, there's that initiative, like more than likely there is just like an additional area of support that we can come in. Like I said, whether it's that like post-production or something like that, that can help you grow. So like typically that's what we look for. It doesn't really have to do with like the followers or all of that stuff. Cause again, it just takes one video, maybe 2 or 3 for like all of that stuff to change. You know what I mean? So
who are your competitors in your space?
Right now, so we're actually evolving into an AI software. We're definitely looking to position ourselves as one of the key players coming into the space with AI. So from that lens, there's this platform called Jabba. They're like an AI tool that works with student athletes with personal branding. There's also Mogul. They specialize in brand partnerships. And then we have like Nilly. They focus on merchandise. But the difference between us and our competitors is that each of our competitors focus on like one specific thing. So like Mogul, for example, all they do is focus on brand partnerships. So whether you have a personal brand or not, that's nothing to do with them. You just come on there and just figure out your partnerships. Now on Jabba, you come up with your personal branding, but then you have to go to another platform to like figure out all the other stuff, so on and so forth. So like what we're building is an AI tool that will allow you to centralize all of that as a personalized experience. So we have an AI tool that gives you content ideas based off your interest. You can also track your metrics there. Then we also have a brand partnership piece where you can go in there and engage with brands. And also a lot of these marketplaces have you apply to the brand. So if you were a student athlete, you would apply, and just like applying for a job, you don't hear back. They might just pick like 10 athletes out of the 100 they applied. The 90 probably don't hear back. So we're going to reverse that, have brands intentionally apply to work with student athletes. So that way student athletes don't have to go through that application fatigue, and they can actually apply to work with brands that actually want to work with them. You know what I mean? And then lastly, custom merchandise. So if a student athlete wanted to utilize fashion to like highlight in a graphic or a quote that they resonate with or a saying that they resonate with, like they can do that all in that app. So that way they don't have to go to different apps and stuff like that. So this is actually one of the first places that we're talking about it publicly. We're actually working on it very, very rigorously right now, like under the wraps and stuff like that. But it's something that I think we're going to like blow everybody out the water with. And I can't wait to bring you on the ride, man.
All right.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
So what's your ultimate vision for your company in a nutshell?
To really empower creators to maximize a lot of these like monetization opportunities as it relates to their personal brand. Again, like a lot of the ones that look like us or just come from places where there's a lack of like resources and tools to help them like propel their personal brand, like making sure that we're bringing like those resources to the forefront, whether it's in the form of software, in the form of services, to really like help a lot of individuals who have talents, hidden talents that they're not able to showcase because of the lack of know-how to like do so and like create that sustainability for their family or help pay for somebody's college or do some difference in the world. I'm really big on just like helping others succeed so they can just help the next person. You know what I mean? However they take that and make it make sense is, you know, what we hope they do. So, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned looking like us, right? And
Yeah.
I'm somebody who believes that in America, race and racial issues underpin like the entire history of America. So kind of with that in mind, what's your journey been like getting to where you are,
Yeah.
getting to this point and trying to get the enterprise that you envision in your mind off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes with like a lot of doubts. You know what I mean? It definitely comes with a lot of like low expectations. I don't know why. I always blow them out the water every time I get, but like a lot of people like might just look at me and be like, oh, he might not know anything. He might not know his left from right. Like, you know, just a little real black kid, you know what I mean? So I think that personally for me is just truly motivation. You know, like you just said, it's history. So it's something that like I've grown accustomed to understand that it comes with the game. It just depends on how you address it, right? Like you either let it keep you down, you either let it keep you going. Obviously, I'm not letting it keep me down, right? So I think that's typically my approach. Like, as long as there's life, there is hope. You know what I mean? Like, as long as I'm like breathing and I'm able to still like take control of the seconds and the time of my day, like I'll be straight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's really like the mindset associated with it. Like, we're not taking no for an answer. If you lock the door, we'll come through the window.
Yeah.
Come through the chimney. We'll find our way in. You know what I mean? And that mindset is simply like what's been able to like get me here. You know? So this is going to keep it going just like that. Just like that.
And then in real practical terms, I mean, I know a little bit about your backstory, but can you talk a little bit about your story, like your journey, your educational journey, et cetera?
For sure, man. So like coming out of high school, I had graduated with like a 2.3. So like a lot of people associated my GPA with like my intellect level, right? A lot of people thought that I wouldn't be able to get into a nice college, get a nice job. And obviously with that GPA, that was truly the case. With a 930 SAT score, that didn't make it any better. So like right from the get-go, like I was always trying to be involved in the entertainment industry. It started off in nightlife, interestingly, like working with like nightlife promoters and being involved in like club events and like booking celebrities and stuff like that. And then that went from nightlife stuff to like media. So like a lot of these celebrities that we had come to the events wanted to start doing like interviews and whatnot. So then I started interviewing creators and whatnot. And then with all of this starting to add up, a lot of the creators were like, what else can we do? Like the interview was dope, but like, can you help us like create some content? Like, can you link with us after this to do that? And I'm like, I don't know what these guys are asking me for, but like, let's do it. Cause at the time, I was a freshman in college and I was a service and supply chain major. Cause it just sounded really cool to me at the time. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I definitely didn't intend on like really having that be my life, but like they were one of the programs that like met me in high school and made me feel like my 2.3 was enough to still be successful. So I didn't know about like marketing like by the book or anything by that time. So after doing these interviews and having a lot of these creators approach me on like how I can support, then the building that I was doing the interviews at my school was the marketing department's building. So like the staff there was like, look, like you're always in here like doing stuff. Like, do you even have a degree program here? And I'm like, nah, like I'm just here doing my thing. You know what I mean? And then they're like, you should check out the strategic communication program. That's when I switched my degree. And then And strategic communication encompasses marketing, PR, advertising, and journalism, at least based off the disciplines that my school had. So like I was able to start learning what I was already doing, right? Like I was already doing this with the creators. Then I started learning it about a textbook. And that's when stuff started to flow. You know what I'm saying? School didn't even start feeling like school for 3 years, like after that, you know what I mean? Because I was doing what I was passionate about, what I was already doing. And that's how Tykoon started. Like we went from Tykoon Management Productions to Tykoon Media to Tykoon this to Tykoon that. We didn't try all types of tycoons like within the span of me being in college. But also while I was there, I was also ordering internships. So like my first one was with Sony Music. I was there doing marketing for a lot of like music centric stuff. And then I left Sony Music to start working with a nonprofit that was local in Baltimore, just to challenge myself to get outside the entertainment industry, because like club, media, Sony Music, like everybody just thinks I'm like a music guy. Everybody thinks I'm solely good for music. So I'm like, all right, let me switch this up. Do some nonprofit marketing. From nonprofit marketing, I did marketing for the Cleveland.com. They're like the top news platform in Ohio. From Cleveland.com to a social marketing agency that was like centered around like influencer marketing and like travel marketing as well. So like we would hire influencers, for example, to like come to California and like showcase the beautiful destinations here and stuff like that. From there, I worked at another nonprofit, so like probably like 5 now. And then from at this point, I'm probably like 6 internships in senior in college. So then when I graduate, I had got into this program called HBCU in LA. And ideally what they do is once you get into the program, they match make you with companies to like work with and whatnot. So I got into the program and was match make with the Walt Disney Company. So I came out here and I took a one-way flight because I knew I wasn't going back to Maryland. At that point, when I got that opportunity, I was like, I'm not going back. My Dukes will figure out Thanksgiving and everything later, but this is a one-way flight to LA, you feel me? So was over there working with Disney. And then the program was 3 months, so I had to housing for 3 months. After the 3 months was over, and we was housed at Emerson College, shout out to Emerson College. After the program was over, I didn't know where I was gonna stay. Fortunate enough though, like while I was at the program, I used to, again, like heavily involved in the music industry. I was associated with Wale, the rap artist from DC. So he had a studio that was like 10 minutes, Paramount Studios, very close to where I was staying at. So like I would go over there, just be in the room, soaking up game. Like the one thing that I always do that always kept me in the room was just like transcribing the notes of the meeting. So like we had a studio session. Whether somebody came here and said the sky is blue, I was just writing it down. Somebody came here and said we need to change this, I would just write it down and like send it to Wale after. So like they just kept me around. So
You're writing by hand?
On my phone, my notes. You know what I'm saying? This is 225. I haven't written with a pen in a minute.
Because you were going like that. I was like,
yeah, but I'm just transcribing everything. And then fast forward to this whole 3 months thing. Because of that relationship I built with them while I was there. When I didn't have housing, it was time to go on a 2-week tour. So I was like, I don't got nowhere to go. I'm with y'all. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna figure out this housing thing while I'm on the road. So like I was on the road with them from city to city trying to figure out housing, like so I can like come back to LA and have a place to stay. At the moment, I'm just day by day in the whole thing. And fortunate enough, the whole 2-week tour turned into like a 3-week, and then it turned into a 4-week. And this is just buying me time to figure out housing. I'm getting denied applications left and right in the means of all of this stuff, but I'm just taking it day by day. Like I got a place to sleep with these guys, so we're gonna figure it out. Then the tour is over. I still didn't have a place, and then
what year is this at this point?
This is 222.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 20 at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, very young. And then when I finished the whole tour thing, I still didn't have a place. And then I'm like, I need a hotel for like a day so I can figure it out. And then it went from like a day to like a week, and then I figured it out and then got a spot. And then the rest was history. In the midst of all of this though, Disney's still going on. At the time it was remote, but I had just started Tykoon Sports like at this timeline, and it was taking a lot of my time. And Disney initially was a remote job, and then they made it in person. So then the business started picking up. I wasn't able to balance it too well with the in-person stuff, especially because I never signed up for an in-person job. So let's just make that clear. I never signed up for an in-person job. It was a transition, like mid-contract or whatever. So long story short, they started noticing that like my time was just getting divided. And it's all love with Disney too, which is why I don't mind sharing the story. But they were just like, look, Peter, like, we're noticing, what's going on. Like something has to be keeping you busy. Like you're XYZ, and there was this like, you can either, get your ish together or like leave next week. And I told him I was going to talk to my mom about it. I knew exactly what I was
Yeah.
gonna do. I knew exactly what I was gonna do. I knew I was gonna leave. Knew I was gonna go like full-time CEO when they told me that. But just so it didn't come off like I was waiting to leave, I was just
Yeah.
like, let me talk to my mom about it.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I left Disney, and then 2 years later, full-time CEO running the company. So it's been good so far. It's been good so far. You know what I mean? But definitely not the easiest road. Definitely a lot of like just, you know, patience and resilience throughout a lot of the situations that I was going through. But that's what, you know, made me who I am.
You went to Morgan State, right?
Yep.
HBCU?
Yep.
What's an HBCU for the people who don't know? Because
A
some people
historically
don't.
black university and college. Yeah, I know I throw the acronym around, but yeah, it's a historically black college university. And you know, like to your question earlier about just like growing up as an African American and the challenges associated with that, like that's what HBCUs help you get familiar with, right? Like they know that they're sending African Americans to these big companies and stuff like that, and they equip you with that mindset, like go in there and do your thing. Like don't let nobody underestimate you. Like what you're learning in class, like let them know you know that ish, you know. And I think that like that's what also, and it's crazy because when I was at Morgan, I don't know what it is. Like when you're in college, you don't see the benefit until you're out.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of me for 100%. When I was in college, I'm like, Morgan. But now that I'm out, I'm like, all right, now I see what I was talking about. You know what I mean? So like much love to like, you know, Morgan and the impact that they have on just like my mindset and everything, because it definitely played a role. And like a lot of the university staff were always supportive of like Tykoon and what I was doing. Like I mentioned earlier, like they would give me space to do interviews, give me space to do events, and like it was where I was able to like practically learn a lot of stuff that I do like as second nature now. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay. We covered a lot of ground already, but
Yeah.
is there anything about NIL or brand partnerships, anything that we haven't discussed you think we should touch on?
I think like you said, I think we touched on just about everything. Just one thing to like re-emphasize is really just the importance of the personal brand, right? And I always try to tell student athletes, like you can utilize this 4 years in college or 6, depending on whatever your sport is, to maximize the next 40 years, right? If you play your cards right, like with this NIL stuff, invest in the right things, build the right relationships, whether you go pro or not, like you can still be well off. You know what I mean? And that's the goal that people should have in this NIL ecosystem that we're in right now. Just thinking about like, how can I set the building blocks for just success in life? You know what I mean? Like what community partners can I build with? What foundation can I start? What grants can I start with funding from this person who is giving us money 24/7, right? Like thinking about how you can utilize a lot of these things to where as though like when you walk across that stage, you're still set. You know, you're not scratching your head. You're not looking left and right. Like you've maximized the 4 years. So that's something I would just like leave the viewers with, you know what I'm saying, amongst everything else we touched on.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Appreciate the
That was good.
conversation.
For
Yeah.
sure. That was good. Good questions.
This podcast is brought to you by Adamson Addoot LLP. Hosted by Christopher Adamson. Produced by Lauren Henning and Chris Weigen. If you have thoughts or suggestions, email us at itspersonal@aa.law. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by guests on this podcast represent the personal perspectives of the individual speakers and do not constitute official positions of Adamson Addoot LLP or its attorneys, staff, or affiliates. Nothing discussed creates an attorney-client relationship, and the content is provided for general informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified attorney about your specific circumstances.